submit, Plagueborn.
Hey there guys, welcome back to the channel. Snoo here. We got 0.4 last of the Druids around the corner. I figure it's definitely time to let you know what I'm up to. At the very least, what build I'm playing. And I can honestly say I'm 100% committed now to the Invoker Ascendancy. I'll talk about why that is. As you can see from the background footage, it is Twister based, but it's a little different than normal. It's actually a hybrid build with spells in play. Cast on crit, Twister, with Twister as the delivery system for the crits. As you can see from the Cast on Crit gem, it does a pretty good job of triggering that gem over and over again. There's a lot under the hood for this build. I'm going to get into a little bit of that. This is not the formal build guide, but I'm going to also talk a bit about an honorable mentions on other ascendancies. People have been asking me, what ascendancy I'm thinking about. Is Twister good for this ascendancy, that ascendancy? And so I'm getting a lot of questions around that. I figure I'll go ahead and talk about that up front. And then we'll get into some of the wild tech interactions that Invoker has for a hybridized attack cast-based build. I think this is now the time to pull the trigger on that kind of build if you're interested. Good news for those of you guys who'd be interested in seeing some kind of path of building so you can at least sink your teeth into the build. I'm not setting this up on max roll length this time. I'm actually using path of building. It seems updated enough to warrant doing this. There's still a lot of problems with the numbers and DPS calculations stuff, so I'm not really worrying about that. There are no notes on here yet, but it does have a fully fleshed out leveling tree, and this is what I've spent most of my time in the last 48 hours working on. It starts with leveling his Twister, Hollow Palm Twister hybrid. I think I'm going to do that again, especially leveling his Invoker. Good reasons for that, which we'll get into later. And then the early end game is the official final snapshot of the build. There's also a little bit more on that just kind of helps you figure out what kind of jewels that you would want to go for at the very end. So now let's talk about the other ascendancies, why I'm not electing to go any of them. I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a TLDR on the pros and cons of the other options. Okay, first up is the Deadeye. So I played Deadeye in 0.3 and I just made a video already, previous video, talking about all the different nerfs that took place to Deadeye. That was before even more nerfs came into play. Falcon Dive, primarily. But I did play it in 0.3. I still think Deadeye, even after all that's said and done, is probably the straightforwardly strong ascendancy for Twister, a pure attack-based Twister. It's got such great Frenzy Charge synergies, and then it uniquely has Frenzy Charges easily on the boss. I wasn't taking Windward, which is deleted now. I wasn't even taking it, but I was taking Gathering Wind. Saw a 10% skill speed nerf there. Roughly a 10% skill speed nerf in the case of the build I was running. For Falcon Dive, I did take this node. I wasn't accuracy stacking, but I got some value out of it and lost a little bit of value there. The biggest loss in speed is from Rigwald's Lineage Gem and Charge Regulation that changes from % more to % increase. That's where the real speed loss came in play, but we got some of it back through improvements to base spears, winged spears, getting new variants, as well as even more damage to Twister. For some reason, Twister's getting buffed. Flying Spear is actually getting damage increases to its base, and so we're losing some speed. We're actually gaining a little bit of damage on the Twister side. How much speed are we losing? Somewhere around 10 to 15% less effective attack speed, aka movement speed, through Whirling Slash. Deadeye still looks really good, but I'm not going to run it mainly because I want to do something different. I like running Twister. I've not got my fill in that, but I want to take it to a different direction. Next up is Pathfinder. New kid on the block, I guess. Got some major buffs coming in. Can't even remember exactly which ascendancies are getting buffed, but primarily it's the small nodes can now get like global defense increase or % increased damage if you don't need the attributes from it. I'm talking about these right here. As well as the ability to start from either the sorceress tree, the warrior tree, or the ranger tree, which could be pretty nice, except the problem is if I had my choice, I would want to start from the druid tree or invoker tree or ranger tree, not sorceress or warrior. So yeah, it was a bit of a bummer when I saw that. It's only those three. I was kind of hoping it would be all of them. I guess she would have been a Scion then, for real, if that was the case. And cool changes. I think it's going to help other builds a lot more than Twister. There's still a way you can build it, but I really don't see Pathfinder being all that special. I mean, we can't take use of the whole sprint thing because, we're already using Whirling Slash to move around. So I don't really think Pathfinder is going to be that great for Twister, to be honest. All right, now to my beloved 0.2 Amazon Accuracy Stacker, which, I didn't visit at all last league. because I wanted to try Deadeye since I knew it was actually stronger, especially single target, better, well-rounded attack-based build. And then we got a whole bunch of speed globally, so I didn't even need the accuracy stacking speed component for Amazon. Now we're seeing some of the speed nerf, and then the huge nerf to Falcon Dive basically kills this build. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a way you can still accuracy stack, and maybe it is faster. Still, I'd have to look at the numbers. Don't have time to do that. I don't recommend starting Amazon. It was nerfed pretty hard in 0.3, I felt, especially with, what is it, this one right here, Critical Strike. These numbers got nerfed pretty hard. You're still incentivized to go accuracy, but, you know, I mean, there's so much de-incentivization now as of 0.4. I don't think it's worth pursuing. We also have some updates to these here. What is this? Surging Avatar, Elemental Surge. Some changes are being made. The tech is improved, I guess. Twister's not that great for those particular nodes. It's still an alright ascendancy. It's got some cool things like Stalking Panther. Probably, maybe better than the Pathfinder, especially early on. It's an ascendancy that's really good super early because of how strong Critical Strike and Penetrate are with kind of low-end gear. Ritualist next on the list. I get asked a lot about this one. You know, I haven't really taken a hard look into this one enough to know for certain how good it is. +1 ring socket is the big one, like, you know, Unfurled Finger and Mystic Attunement. When you have great gear, this becomes really good and is great for accuracy stacking. Whoops, I guess that's not going to work too well now, but yeah. I don't really recommend it too much. I think it's fine. A lot of people like Ritualist mainly for just going really fast on Whirling Slash. Again, accuracy stacking, it had big synergies with that because of the extra ring slot. I don't see it being that great for Twister, so I'm still not really going to look into Ritualist. Next up, we have Titan. Now, I actually made a Titan in Path of Building back in 0.3 before the league ended. A lot of you picked up on that, and some people even tried rolling it. The reason why Titan was so good is because of hulking form. Most of you know that. It does have issues with the starting location, except for the fact that there is a great many area of effect and skill effect duration nodes, which are sort of alternative ways to scale Twister damage. It's really lackluster in terms of its % increased damage with raw damage, but it kind of makes up for that in skill speed and AoE once you know the breakpoints. And then in the end, once you really fleshed out the tree and you swung all the way around here to get Dance with Death, it's really nice. Now, the unfortunate thing is that setup involved Resolute Technique, and Falcon Dive actually played a bigger role on Titan than it did on Deadeye, and it was in fact faster than Deadeye. It was faster, had bigger twisters, and higher skill effect duration with less damage. It was a really nice build, certainly, hypothetically. It got knocked down a peg, especially the fact that it was taking advantage of Constricting Command since it was pathing through here. That made a lot of sense. So the problem is that version of the build featured more in the way of like damage for Whirling Slash. There was like Warcry in there to improve Whirling Slash, empowering all the Whirling Slashes, and then, you know, using a high level one to really just mow down, like a lawnmower, just mow down all the enemies, have massively sized twisters. It would have been a lot of fun. The nerf to Constricting Command hurt this one pretty bad, as well as the accuracy stacking. So that was tentatively what I wanted to league start if you had asked me at the end of 0.3, but now I'm afraid not. The crazy thing is, if I hadn't picked Invoker, I probably would have picked Witch Hunter, and this is the one that I haven't talked about hardly at all. People keep bringing this up here and there. Weapon Master, you know me, I love me some weapon set points. There's a lot you can do with this. I think people have barely even begun tapping into the potential of this, and since Twister has Whirling Slash speed and then Twister damage, it's perfectly set up for weapon set focused. With 100 of your passive skills being weapon set, that offers a great deal in terms of potential speed without accuracy stacking. Just going for attack speed all over the tree. Let's get it in there. All right, there it is. You can see these are all attack speed nodes. Most of these would affect Whirling Slash's speed. I do like it, and then Witch Hunter is getting some major buffs in the form of Sorcery Ward. Yeah, that's a new ascendancy point. It's going to actually provide some seriously good defense. So highly defensive and a lot of speed potential here. Maybe some issues with damage, but Twister, I mean, damage is the least of your concerns with Twister, honestly. So I think Witch Hunter is actually a pretty solid bet. I bet you guys would like me to give you a passive tree on the Witch Hunter with all that weapons up points. Unfortunately, I don't have one. Never spent the time to do that. I thought about doing it, but there's only so much time, and I want to make sure I get the build that I'm going to run right, which we're about to get to. But first, one more honorable mention, and that would be the Druid. So there's no picture of the Druid. We don't know the Druid skills, by and large, except for what was shown in the live reveal. We don't know the Druid tree, except for, you know, some things that are slow drip information. There's hidden trees with the Oracle. That seems to be the most interesting point. The Druid has an exceptional starting location, an odd choice for scaling AoE, so you would immediately hit the next AoE breakpoint, get a lot of crit here, or magnitude if that's good, and then you can actually path manually to anticipation, which would be really cool. But not a whole lot after that. I mean, you're immediately going to have to go down here and pretend you're a Titan, and then swinging all the way to the right-hand side of the tree where most of the goodies are is kind of problematic. Not a whole lot in the way of crit either. So got some issues with after the initial pathing out of Druid for sure. I don't think I want to go up top side unless maybe a cast on crit version of Druid would work. So the Druid is a really great archetype for weapon sets and, you know, hybridized builds and stuff, so I could definitely dig it. I'm not sure it'd be that great for Twister, and the Ascendancy is looking really lackluster. I'm not going to talk that much about it since we apparently we only have old information, but the old information looks pretty bad, honestly. But the saving grace is that the Druid is really its weapon archetype, not its Ascendancy. So talismans can be equipped by anybody. So there's still a chance, regardless of what I league started, that I might actually be playing Druid, at least in spirit. Now let's get into the Invoker, which is what I am intending to play. Why am I going Invoker? Well, the Invoker got buffed pretty big. Check it out. We got Protect Me from Harm, now grants 35% less evasion rating, previously 50%. That's the one that transforms your evasion and armor into armor, giving it to you for free effectively, except for losing some evasion. So that has been improved a bit, although I wasn't planning to take this node. Sometimes I like to take it for leveling, make you extra tanky, but generally speaking, I'm setting up the build so I don't want to actually get hit. You're going to kind of have a better sense of that with like the helmet choice and stuff. Anyway, next on is a really big one that I like. The Soul Spring Eternal now additionally grants meta skills have 50% increased spirit reservation efficiency. Now that's not 50% off, but that's basically a third of the spirit cost is now taken away. So I decided to make a build that had 3 meta gems. It has Elemental Invocation, Cast on Crit, and Cast on Elemental Ailment. Unfortunately, now you cannot put multiple copies of Cast on Crit. Would love to do that, but anyway, it should be a lot easier to handle all of that metagem spirit thing. And I really got into the game of like trying to set up your spirit gems and understanding now what I learned in 0.3. I can set different weapon sets to spirit skills. That whole thing wasn't nerfed, so it's really gotten me excited for that huge buff here in the way of doing that. This definitely helped steer me towards the Invoker. Unbound Avatar got a buff. I thought about using it, may use it at some point, but not really going for that. I guess it's got nerfed here. Probably going to use Unbound Avatar leveling, but not in the end game. There were a couple skills that got buffed. Last time on stream I was playing with Cast on Crit Comet, and the infusions have now been buffed, and so it's easy to get infusion. Just cast on Elemental Ailment, Living Balm. Gave me plenty of fire infusions to get the boosted comets. It's really good. But off stream, I realized that there were some really awesome synergies in play with Spark. Since Spark is basically the same as Twister, I've even talked about it in previous leagues, that Twister is essentially Spark from PoE1, except in attack form. So why not do both? Could be pretty good. Now, what are some of the really cool and wild interactions that take place with the Invoker? This is the part of the video that I'm really excited to share with you guys. I'm just going to hit some of the really big points on here, again, before the official build guide. Mana is the first one. Going into this, I knew that mana would not be a problem with this build, whereas most people would have serious problems with mana management on like a really, high mana sink cast on crit build. Indigon just got nerfed, and I'm thinking about maybe Indigon build at a later date, but not right off the bat. Anyway, even something as simple as this, putting a rune in, the Twister weapon, leech mana, boom, your mana's full, like all the time. And level 1 Whirling Slash, net positive mana. So while spells cast on Crit Comet or cast on Crit Spark or any of that will drain mana really hard, I'll be returning it in spades with Leech. I mean, it's just such a simple solution. That's one of the great reasons why I was interested in a hybridized build. I knew from playing Twister that I was getting way more mana than I could ever even use with that build as a pure attack build. Figure, why not put some of that excess mana to good use? Tongue. Another one is bifurcated crits. So Tangle Tongue gives bifurcated crits, which for some reason in the path of building is showing up for spells. I'm pretty sure that's not the case, because that would be quadruple damage if it does. Anyway, it's double damage. How's it double damage? Well, bifurcated crits means that if you're critting 100% of the time, you're actually hitting twice, which means for the sake of getting ailments out, as well as getting crits out, you're getting double the effectiveness. So double the cast on crit procs, as well as cast on elemental ailments, if ailments are going out with it. So huge synergy there. Getting Twisters, which obviously need to crit, and I get a lot of bonus damage from that. Tangle Tongue is a terrific, you know, League start item, which isn't even expensive anymore because it was nerfed, but not so much that it's bad, at least for this setup. It's going to be a terrific way to start off the build. In the end, won't be using Tangle Tongue, but yeah, bifurcated crits, really nice. Moving down to the offhand, you see I got an interesting choice here. Effigy of Cruelty. Now, if you check the VOD from the beginning of the intro, you will notice, especially on the boss, that the boss was getting stacks of critical weakness. How is that the case? Well, if I proc anything or deliberately use any spell with this focus equipped, it will actually, and it crits, it will stack critical weakness, which is dynamic, meaning if I move back to the other weapon set or either or, it stays on it. Now, it doesn't last forever, and it's not that amazing in maps. With monsters having more health, it'll get more use. But I really like this interaction. It works well with Spark. This was not worth doing for Comet, but totally is for Spark, given how many spell crits are actually going out. And that leads me well into the other weapon set. You'll notice something interesting that I've chosen for my weapon. +4 to level of all projectile skills. Yep, that works for spells. So we can actually use a melee weapon that gives a huge amount of spell damage. So I don't necessarily have to like somehow have a Twister weapon, a Whirling Slash weapon, and a spell weapon. I can kind of wrap it in either way with weakness or with extra damage. So I can kind of dynamically play around with that. I say dynamically because it snapshots either way depending on when the spell goes out, but like you can like use your spell, you know, to get extra critical weakness, or you can use your spell to do a whole bunch of extra damage with plus prog skills. And then of course we get double dipping in the way of the amulet. So normally I don't really pursue plus level of projectile skill gems just for the sake of Twister, but now definitely will. But that's not even the best of it. The best of it is in the support setup. So you know how with Twister, I use Projectile Acceleration 3. Well, that works extremely well for Spark. Check any profile on PoE Ninja, you're going to see this gem in the Spark setup. And so if we go down here to check the cast on crit Spark, you'll see it right here. Retreat 3. Essentially no downside for 30% more proj damage, which counts for Spark, but not Comet. One of the reasons why I switched to Spark. This is really good because, again, if I check other profiles, they don't have many options there. I mean, they got, like, Zenith, too, and, you know, Elemental... I can't even remember the name of it, the one that makes it turns off your elemental ailments, so you can't, you wouldn't be shocking or freezing with Spark at all, which is massive downsides on both ones. Like, you have to have enough mana for Zenith and everything. No downside here. I just simply have to be playing the build the way I would normally be playing, and I get actually even more damage then, because those two gems that I just mentioned, those two supports, they only go up to 25%. Also, Blindside, another huge synergy with this build. So Blindside works here because I'm already blinding, naturally. Everything, from Whirling Slash or Twister, always blinds. And so, invariably, anything gets hit by Spark is going to get full benefit of this. More crit damage, more crit chance. More along the lines of projectile speed is the passive tree. So there's also projectile speed nodes in the passive tree, which normally I would devote only to Twister, but now they're useful for Twister as well as Spark. So again, even more benefit on the passive tree, not to mention skill effect duration. So skill effect duration is very good for Spark, but not really something you would necessarily use a support gem for. I saw some people doing it, but it is really good to have it if it's effectively for free. And that's not all as far as the passive tree. If you really go in here with like a magnifying glass, you're going to see some crazy amount of synergies going on with all the choices that are made, especially with like crit, global crit. Now here's the cool thing about going Invoker and Monk. Invoker specializes in elemental ailments, which is obviously good, as well as crit. Spell crit or attack crit? Well, it's not like a warrior that specializes in attack crit. It's not like a caster, which specializes in spell crit, it is a hybrid build, and the tree represents that. These crit nodes are by and large hybrid, work for both. So I need to crit basically 100% of the time with Twister, and preferably 100% of the time with spells. I get to double dip in that effectiveness. The only ones that aren't hybrid, I think, are these right here. Struck through. That little part of the wheel there. Everything else works for both ends. There's no conditional as far as it being for spells or crit. Which brings me to probably the single biggest breakthrough in the entire process of making this build, which actually came back in the middle of 0.3. It occurred to me, either I got tipped off from a user or I stumbled onto it myself. I could flood my character with frenzy charges via the Resonance Keystone, based on the new supports that we had at the time. So I didn't know that actually going into 0.3, and that's one of the huge reasons why I chose Deadeye over Invoker, for fear of frenzy charge uptime, whether for bosses or maps. You guys know the synergies between barrage, salvo. It's super important whether it's attack based or hybrid based, proc based. Absolutely flooded with frenzy charges by virtue of armor break 3. Break armor equal to 20% physical damage dealt by supported skill, 20% chance to gain an endurance charge. When supported skills, fully break armor. If you can break every single enemy's armor before you kill it, you got it made. So how am I able to break armor? Not easy with Tangle Tongue. Look how low that physical damage is. Not easy at all. Well, half of the breakthrough was just in realizing that all that would work. The other half came later on when I realized in the middle of pathing the exact way I was going next to material solidification. Gain 8% of damage as extra physical damage. So huge when a lot of my Twister damage is ultimately elemental, through elemental twisters, which are coming through Wake Up Destruction boots automatically, shocked ground, all that. It also has break armor bonuses as small nodes. So the combination of this wheel, which is assigned only to weapon set 2, with Resonance Keystone, with any garbage weapon, with any physical damage whatsoever, results in frenzy charges for days. And it's so nice with the Invoker that because we're going elemental expression, I can use exploit weakness. Not because I need elemental expression to do more damage, but because I need to rip off the armor break so that I can reapply it over and over and over and keep giving myself chance to get frenzy charges even on bosses. It's beautiful. It's not the greatest boss uptime, but at least it's halfway competitive with the Deadeye's internal cooldown with a called shots ascendancy. Really nice. And one last wild tech interaction, just put the cherry on top of this segment of the video. Let's go over to cast on elemental ailment Flame Wall. Flame Wall, what does this do? Well, it makes your projectiles do extra damage, and I used it already for Twister, but now I get to double dip in its benefits because it's just as good for Spark as it is for Twister, so I get it for both of the projectiles. And it's actually even better for Spark, because Spark has a lower damage per projectile than Twister, at least in the beginning when you don't have a huge level of Spark. And so that extra fire and extra lightning. How am I getting extra lightning? Well, I got Siphon Element, and I'm running around shocked ground with Wake of Destruction. Pure cold or not, still shocking the ground, still killing shocked enemies, still getting infused lightning. But of course, the real reason I'm using Siphon Elements is not for lightning infusion, it's for cold infusion. Why cold infusion? Well, look at Spark. Huge benefits for cold infusion. And they just buffed it. Take you right back to the beginning of the video where we looked at Spark. Both the lightning and cold component is getting buffed in damage. And so all those cold infusions I'm getting from killing frozen enemies, everything's frozen. With this version of the build, I mean, this is already tried and tested in 0.3. I did the combination of Wake of Destruction, Call the Brotherhood. Every single Twister is lightning infused. All that lightning damage is converted to cold damage. 100% of Spark's damage is cold damage. You best believe everything is getting frozen as tracks. So even though it's not the most defensive build on paper, you know me, I love that freeze layer. I love the freeze layer defense. I mean, it really works nicely here. And it's even more important because I'm not relying only on cast on crit, but cast on elemental ailment and elemental invocation, which is essentially an 8x Spark special that we get to use. You saw me use it on the boss. 8 sparks going out all at once. And yes, we can actually support that mana with the mana leech from Tangle Tongue. And you know, just for one little, you know, the dessert after the dessert. You guys know what this is, right? I get asked this question all the time. Snoo, why are you taking Anticipation? You don't have any skills with Unleash. Well, Salvo works with that tech. For some reason, Salvo on Twister is programmed the same way as Unleash. You know what else is programmed as Unleash? Unleash. This build could use both Salvo and Unleash. I even tested a little bit. Not too bad. Hard casting Spark with Unleash. Possibly future variant of the build. So guys, that's it. That's why I'm going Invoker, and there's a lot more where that came from. Last time I chose Deadeye for good reason, and I explored so many insane tech options that came after it. I have no doubt in my mind it's going to be a similar story again. This is not the formal build guide, but at least in advance I'm getting a lot of this out for you ahead of time. If you want to know what it's like to level with this build, you can take a look at my Act 1 leveling portion. Probably going to use Fangs of Frost and Parry instead of Frozen Locus, which no longer works, but essentially playing the build very similarly to how I played it on the Deadeye, with the Invoker rushing Hollow Palm, hybridizing it like that. We're going to finish the video by just kind of showing the end of a full Arbiter clear. Keep in mind, Arbiter is quite literally the worst encounter in the game for both Spark and Twisters, especially Hybrid. Whereas the new League mechanic is a bunch of tight arenas, which a lot of you have been making me perfectly aware that maybe this build's going to be fantastic for the League mechanics, since it's all small rooms and that synergizes greatly with it. Arbiter of Ash, not so much. But anyway, here's the kill, so you get to see it. This is the exact, essentially the exact gear that I had represented in the early in-game section of the build. And so that's what it looks like. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below, and we'll see you next time.
Submit, Plague-born. The fourth. Mobile soul.